Yep, I promise I'll refresh it. Alright, so you just changed. There we go, now it's showing. Let's go.
Class has started, and the assignment is due by end of class.
I am the best streamer.
Oh, God, I can hear double. Okay, yeah, it's working.
Awesome. Okay, it is 7:05 p.m. Let's get started on the official StarCore Test Tournament 4.9 Balance Council. As always, we are going to go section by section through the feedback form right here on stream, which I am not actually streaming to Discord. I should do that. We'll have a brief overview of the feedback in each section, and then we will open the floor for feedback from you guys in the council chamber. Overall, pretty decent tournament experience
I
with
had a good time.
yep, two twos. Ooh, that's very sad. We also got four fours and two fives. The tournament was apparently just right, airing on a little too short. I would absolutely agree that it was a pretty good length. That was maybe cut a tiny bit short, simply because most teams are fast movers, and fast movers explode really fast.
Very nice.
Only EU servers were used for this particular tournament. Supposedly, the connection latency overall was not bad, with a couple exceptions. One person reports a trash connection. One European is happy, and a couple of other people are pretty ambivalent. Awesome. Does anyone have anything they want to say about their input latency for this tournament? Nothing? Okay. Oh, yep, ASQ certainly did have a rough time with Aster getting obliterated by the internet gods. It would be pretty nice if we had the performance of the EU servers in their current location, somewhere in Texas, but that is not the way of things, unfortunately. Alright, let's start off with MA weapons. Tier 1 PDX, just right. Tier 1 gimbal, airing on too weak. UNN heavy torpedo launcher, very much too weak. Slinger, too weak. Tier 2 gimbal, also too weak. I'm sensing a theme here. Tier 2 PDX, just right. Airing on too weak. Derico, too strong. 500% climbing cost immediately. And Gladius, just right. Quote, a lack of accurate fast shell kinetic turrets meant Derricos and Reavers were everywhere. Derricos are really good at DDoSing bad systems. Make tier 1/tier 2 gimbals cheaper again, or increase the damage compared to the PDX versions. Derrico should be pushed further into an anti-fast mover spec. Reduce its armor damage to almost nothing. Push its comp damage higher in proportion. This way, it becomes useless against ships with proper armor cladding and a deadly execution weapon and powerful against poorly protected ships. Marking the Gladius as too strong here, as it does a lot of damage and has a lot of integrity for its size and weight, making it kinda just better than the Surters for fast movers. I suggest a significant weight increase to make it more suited for brawlers and tanks and give room for Surters to be the fast mover energy turret of all time instead. This strikes me as a bit of a problem, actually, because the Gladius is supposed to be one of the very few turrets we balance around, as opposed to balancing it around everything else. So we will think about that pretty hard. Derricos causing lag. Derricos are spicy. Tier 1 PDX is good. UNN suffers from existing, apparently. Slingers are sustained kinetic, and it is outclassed. And tier 2 gimbals are tier 1s, but worse. Alright, let's open up the floor for discussion. In case you are not familiar with how to join the stage in the council chamber, there should be a little button right at the bottom of your screen that has like a little hand. If you click on that, I will scream at you and then let you up here to talk. Okay. Maybe only a little, Nate. So, my proposed solution for fixing the Dorico is to put a small climbing cost on it of around about 5% and slightly decrease its battle points in return. So that bringing 10 or less, or perhaps even less than that, I don't know, maybe even 8, would be same price, and bringing more than that would become increasingly expensive.
Yeah, they can also become a high performance cost.
Yes. The alternative would be to put a hard grid cap on the Dorico, and that strikes me as extremely cringe. I prefer to not do this.
For soft caps when we can.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, to elaborate on that, I'm not a big fan of hard caps. Soft caps are a much better gameplay design. TM. Quote, I would do the Nate thing of increasing the weapon's hard stats by 2 times and doubling the weapon's BP. From Demon Fox. I think that would also be a decent solution.
That's a pretty reasonable suggestion as well. Something that it suffers from that would need buffing if we're increasing its cost is its durability. But I don't hate that idea.
Uh, I hope I'm not cutting out for anyone else, Squid. That would be very embarrassing on my part.
You're not cutting out for me at all.
Excellent. Demon Fox, if a gun that must be spammed is causing performance issues when it is spammed, I think we need to make some pretty serious considerations on whether to include it or not. Yeah, I think that that would be a good solution as well. All right. If no one has anything else to contribute to the MA section, let's move on to Flaw, Federated Arms Limited. Railgun 2.0 is listed as Just Right, Goalkeeper, Nobody Knows. X4 Demolisher, Just Right. Shipwreck Heavy Carronade, Just Right, Leaning on Too Weak. And Neva LBX5, just split between
Just
Too
too
Weak
weak.
and Just Right.
Just too weak.
Yep, just too weak. So sad. Quote, X4s having power jar is sad. X4s are dreadful. X4s are tethering on too weak. If the X4 is so bad, where is the X5? Okay. Shipwrecks are too slow to hit fast movers even at short range, and their damage is somewhat lacking. LBX5 is absolute trash. It does not fuse correctly when fired upon fortified shields, and its damage does not correlate with its high cost. Please buff this weapon's damage by at least 20%. LBX feels a little weak with the amount of hull damage it does, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if it could be buried and used as a secondary for attrition instead. Wait, we had the LBX? Shipwrecks are overpointed. Naval LBX are ironically poor hull killers. It's like the old Helldivers 500 kilo bombs. They looked really cool, but their actual effects were often underwhelming. Can we bring back this group's strikecraft? I have mean things to say about that statement. They hit the sweet spot between effective and annoying, just make them a touch weaker to PD.
Honestly, though, it was a common sentiment that the Nate Strikecraft were the least obnoxious and most balanced. So
Yeah, I would concur with that.
it's something to consider. But I'm just gonna go ahead and say not for the next one. If we continue to hear this feedback of, yes, this is a missing niche now that there are no Strikecraft, except the longswords aren't in either, are they?
I believe they are not.
Yeah. If we continue to hear that feedback, it's definitely on the short list then. But one more TT with no Strikecraft at all, since we trimmed the weapons, I think, is something that we can commit to.
Alright, with that, we're going to open up the floor for comments from the audience.
We also should refresh. Spartan submitted his opinions.
Oh, certainly. Sorry, you don't get opinions on MA.
Unless you come up here and speak your mind.
Yeah, you're gonna have to share in front of the class if you have thoughts.
You have really pressing thoughts to share about MA.
Yeah. Alright, let's see. From Nate, LBX is in, question mark. I don't know why you were surprised. From Tate, God do not buff the LBX. From Squid, I'm gonna lose it. Same. From Demon Fox, you kept picking the most obnoxious Strikecraft to keep in, and kept asking why everyone hates Strikecraft. From Spartan, I agree X4s are weak sauce.
Pretty good roundup.
Yes, I agree, Tate. Not having to worry about Strikecraft is nice. I think that completely obliterating a core gameplay mechanic, that being shield shunting, is not very fun for anyone. From Spartan, quote, Slingers could use either a price drop or a velocity bump. I agree. From Tate. Oh, go ahead.
This has always and continued to be true, even after giving it to them a couple of times.
Yep. Yeah, we'll add in UNN this week. Tate, the idea of a dedicated Strikecraft game mode would be funny. I do not think that we currently have the development resources for one, though.
I mean, if you want to spearhead it in almost its entirety, aside from like potentially organizing once you've picked a date, yeah, sounds great. Like that's the only reason that most of my exhibitions have ever happened, like pod racing or any of the many like themed ones, is I just decided to do them, built the world, and said, "Hey, we're gonna do it this weekend because there's not a tournament scheduled then. Um, please show up." And then begged, muzzled, or invalid. Um, please, 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 server.
Yep.
So
I
if you want to run something like that, literally any of you, like you put in the front end work and give us something to throw on a server on a date, and like we can help with the getting things to run on the server part, right?
Yes, very well put, Darth.
Yeah.
Um, if you would like to see something happen and you would be willing to run an event on it, please let us know. I would love to have more mini events. They are pretty cool.
Yeah, they're fun.
Alright, great to hear, Tate. Okay, let's see. If that is all to be said about Flaw and also MA too, let's move on to BTI. The LRM is the most just right thing we've seen so far. The Arrow 5 single? Wait. Okay. Arrow 5 single, pretty solid. MRM, pretty solid. Painless, bordering between just right and too weak. Same with Baneless. I'm surprised this isn't more weak. Arrow 5, just right as always. The ERPPC, just right. And let's move on to comments. Quote, single arrow is poor value versus the X5. That's honestly it with this pack. Good job. Quote, bring back the 4.8 PPCs. Okay, Enderoth. Quote, Kinetic PD is in a weird spot right now and isn't really great. I would never see myself taking Painless or Baneless over just spamming Spartans. Alright, if that is all, let's open up the floor for comments. From Nate, quote, BTI PD lags re. Torment Nexus consumes all. Please do not get me started. I don't think I'll be able to stop if I start complaining about that. Alright. General sentiment seems to be that kinetic point defense is worse than laser point defense.
The advantage that kinetic point defense was historically supposed to have against laser PD when we've had tournaments when they're balanced against each other is that most laser PD, especially when we used to have the PDT, was because it was hit scan good against clearing swarms of missiles, whereas kinetic point defense usually had higher damage and was better against, the arrows or the cockatoos, etc.
Mic off. Mic on.
Yep, and Demon Fox raises an excellent point. For the situations where kinetic PD excels, flares excel harder. See, quote, the only high alpha non-machine gun PD we have is in FAS. All other kinetic PD is machine gun style. Does the goalkeeper count as kinetic? The Erebos does not exist. I'm sorry to tell you, Persons. Quote, perhaps ballistic is more accurate here. Yes, that would be a better terminology than kinetic. Quotes, kinetic was for everything but LRMs. Laser is LRMs and Derricos. Alright. Quote, Erebos is unique as it's the only flak type we have other than the goalkeepers. But we can talk about the Erebos later in the Serpent Arms section. So, in short, BTI looking pretty good. Single arrow launcher is slightly worse than the pentuple arrow launcher. And kinetic point defense has lost its niche. Yep, an excellent point from Nate. Point defense in general is kind of bad compared to flares for all situations except for the Derrico.
And maybe the tridents.
Can you even flare tridents, like, effectively?
You can flare tridents, but tridents keep coming. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's why.
The trident guidance system is too stupid to be flared. Tridents are killed by flare. Yes, that is a good point from Squid. It is pretty rare that we see ship killing amounts of missiles compared to a year ago. They are primarily secondary weapons now. Also a good point from Spartan. A year ago we had missile reloads. We no longer have them now. I'm going to assume reloads in this case to mean unlimited reloads. Yep, that is very true, Demon Fox. Part of the reason Derricos dominated is because people stopped taking point defense. But alright. Let's see, what's our next section? 40k. Alright, if there is no more commentary on the biotech industry's point defense specifically, and its missiles, I suppose, let's move on to 40k Manufactorium. We can talk more about the missiles versus point defense debate later. I would kind of like to get through all the guns first, if that's alright with y'all. Okay, the Aegis autocannon flak turret is just too weak. The macro cannon is just right. The heavy macro cannon, also just right. Lance battery, likewise, and Nova cannon is extremely just right.
Yay! I'm
This-
only a symptom of a greater issue.
Aster asks, did the Aegis flak not triggering get fixed?
What would you mean?
Alright, comments for 40k. Please buff the heavy macro cannon to parity with the regular macro cannon. Aside from the heavy macro being a touch overpriced, as it has a lower DPS more than double the price, near perfect pack. Well done, Darth. Aegis could use a buff, very squishy.
It is point defense. Apparently the heavy macro isn't keeping up parity, which is news to me, because when I made it, Nate and I went through the DACA dossier for each gun to make sure that all of them were roughly equivalent DPS. I can give it another looking at.
Yeah, and it may be an issue of effective DPS and what's the word? Visual FPS, I suppose, as compared to actual raw damage numbers. Oh wait, I cannot say words. Excuse me, persons. I do not right click. Okay, let's open up the floor for comments on 40k. It's getting really lonely up here with just Darth. He's pretty cool, but there could be more people. From Demon Fox, just a case of 12-second reload paired with more than double the battle points, with, as far as I can tell, only double the damage.
Yeah, for the heavy macro.
So yeah, it does appear to be a case of visual DPS then.
Yeah, might be. I also figure, I think part of what you're paying for is the big health pool, but you're also paying for that in weight. So it might be something to look at.
Alright, from Tate, I expected to see more Novas, only saw one. From Spartan, concur with the Aegis sentiment, maybe extend the base down one block so it has more mount points.
It has 5 mount points.
That would be an interesting block size actually, a 3 tall point defense.
It has 5 mount points.
But yeah, that's already way better than the vast majority of point defense that isn't the apes. Mount points, Greg, who lives in
Who's
your internal citadel?
who's
It has
who's
over
out here?
5,000 mount points.
Who's
Was an
out here
outlier.
going to complain about the painless? Your fucking PDX got one. What was this? All the point defense forever has been like bad mount points and fragile and gets blasted off after a little while, and that's like part of the feature. Is like later on through a battle you get less point. Why is the Aegis unique in this? Every other point defense has this feature. Has more of this feature. This isn't new.
I think you should give the Aegis 20 mount points. All on the bottom. Okay, let's see. Persons, you are good to speak.
No, he's not.
I accepted his request. He just needs to click the button. Oh, shoot.
Hey.
There we go.
Excuse the stupidity. So just a quad of cannons. I think it's 40k is a great mod. It looks great, but oh, am I crackling? Sorry, Tate.
A little bit.
All right, I will fix that before my next statement. But I think that the mod would benefit from some really slick VFX. I'm thinking of especially the Nova Cannon and the Macro Cannons, which, I mean, what they have is fine, but could look much cooler. Um, I'm thinking maybe you could rip the VFX off of the X4 for the Macro Cannon or the Nova Cannon. I'm not sure. Um, just as a random option that wouldn't require too much effort. That's all I got.
Myself.
I mean, maybe I need to give it another look, but last I checked, the macro cannon is just a red dot.
Oh, you meant the shell. Yeah.
Yeah, the shell. Not the actual models for the weapons are great.
Yeah, those look amazing.
Nate, well, I thought you were talking about
Right,
like
that's all I got.
I thought you were talking about like a barrel effect, and firing effect and hit effect. If it's just travel effect, yeah, I can steal some of Nate's effects and modify them and change the homework so that the teacher can't tell the difference.
All right. Let's
I
see.
tried to give the Nova Cannon a like noticeable trail, and it didn't work, as far as I can tell. So
Quote from Tate. That is true. In reference to not many super heavy guns, it was the testament of fast little fucks. So not seeing Novas is kinda to be expected.
yeah, there were a lot of we were not expecting a lot of tanks. Um, and the Nova has always been a niche weapon, and we convinced MTD not to take it this time.
Yeah. Probably for the best,
It didn't
looking
take
at
much
everyone else's.
convincing because there were just other weapons, and we were excited to bring out the Cortal, which I have yet to try to fit a Nova Cannon in, but I will.
That sounds scary. Quote, instead he was given the state mandated 6x Somnus. Alright, let's see if there are no other comments for Darth and the 40k Manufactorum. Let's move on to Onyx. Tumult is very just right. Deimos, just right, bordering on too weak. The Forager is extremely just right. And the Eris is merely very just right. Comments for Onyx. Quote, I would love to see the Deimos receive a small buff. Quote, Deimos is just a touch too expensive and has too high power draw for its damage. Otherwise, a very good turret. Ares is fine, don't touch, but I will say I would love for the pole slash frying pan ammos to be re-added, as they are fun, and having impulse on only one weapon, an expensive one to boot, should make it easier to work around. If they aren't re-added, can we have the ammo pulled instead, so my dreams can be put to rest? Unfortunately, due to the particular method we used for removing impulse, we cannot have just one gun with impulse. Technically, impulse does still exist on the majority of our weapons, but we reached into Weapon Core's brain and snipped a couple wires to make it not do anything. So we can indeed remove the impulse forger ammos. Yes, the pull ammo does still work, but it did not say nice things about my mother, so I'm gonna remove it. see. Squid says, quote, they work, they're also obnoxiously loud. Prasan says, it's so fucking loud. Demon Fox says, can we kill its sound? Nate says, remove Artificer, re-add Impulse to grids, not shields. I don't know why you'd want to remove yourself, but you do you, man. Tate says, can we kill all Impulse, poll included? I concur. Alright. Enough memeing about Impulse. Let's see, let's open up the floor if people want to talk. The Deimos, in my personal opinion, I am surprised that it made it through the massive weapon list trimming, but I agree that it would be good to see it get a little buff. Quote from Spartan, I never see anyone use the Deimos. That's what I'm saying. Quote from Persons, I have been trying to use it, but it's just not satisfying any longer. Nate, I will... yep, there we go. Quote, I use it in scrims, but I haven't scrimmed. It's too weak. Quote from Master, Deimos is like Asterius in laptop format. Yes, Tate, the Deimos does have a pretty high shell speed, but it is still underwhelming, in my opinion, compared to other penetrative guns. Quote from Tate, just give a teeny tiny love tap and watch people say it's too strong. It'll be different this time, I swear. Quote from Spartan, I'm mean. What? No, you're not. Just bump up the numbers 20% and call it a day. Quote from Persons, the Deimos has fantastic VFX, SFX, and has great secondary characteristics. However, its firepower is just not keeping up with how tanky things are now, I feel. Quote from Aster, 300 BP will fix. Alright, I can add 300 battle points right now. Quote from Anomaly, Deimos is a fun weapon in theory, but doesn't have the stats to keep up. That's why it isn't being brought. Quote from Chet, isn't the Deimos just supposed to be a turreted Artemis? Yes, I believe so. Unfortunately, we do not have the Artemis anymore.
The Phobos.
Oh, you're right, Phobos.
Put the Phobos back in.
I would appreciate that. But probably not something that will be happening unless there's like a very big community uproar over it. Quick, everyone paying invalid to add the Phobos. Quote from Chet: swap it in the single shot, slot it into the Sylvius type roll. There's a new anti-fast gun. That's a good idea.
I actually
Mic
love that
off.
idea. I actually love that roll for the demos. Wait a minute, hang on. Wait, based?
Mic on.
Alright. I think that is an excellent idea, and that should wrap up a conversation for Onyx, unless someone really, really wants to talk about the Ares or Tumult. Serpent Arms. Erebos is just not sure. The Asterius is bordering between too strong and just right. Somnus, very just right. The Sharon is also just right. Quote, the Somnus feels a touch noodly, maybe 10 to 15% buff. Sharon is powerful, but its range is a little too short. Perhaps a 5 to 10% buff to its range to my apologies, to incentivize dealing with this other extreme drawbacks. Asterius are not too strong because of any one field, more that is just good for everything. It's anti-fast slash anti-brawler slash anti-tank slash kiting slash DPS slash easy to fit. Every ship could take Asterius plus energy weapon and do well. It is a good multitasking gun. Asterius would be better at 350 battle points as it was in 4.8. Asterius suffer from being the gun of all time. Small, light, cheap, and reliable, with good damage means that it's one of the only turrets that can be fitted to any ship en masse and do well. If one gun is good enough for everything, why use anything else? Could use with eating the Asterius and replacing it with either Cerberus or Sylvius. Got plenty of medium/light turrets that can bulletoes. Alright, that's it for comments. Let's open up the floor for discussion. Quote from Squid: do not buff the Somnus. Oh my god. And that is reflected elsewhere. Sounds like we need to buff the Somnus. Quote, Asterius is not the problem, it's a symptom of other problems. Quote, what if we got rid of everything but the Asterius? I can't think of a funny response to that. That just made me sad. Quote from Spartan, when you cut like 70% of the weapons, people are going to gravitate towards generalist weapons. Honestly, I would disagree with that. I have seen pretty similar weapon variety to what we had prior to the great weapon cutting. And personally, I have actually branched out a lot more in the weapons I use. Quote from Aster, I have branched out too, but more because of learning the meta than the weapon set. Having a much reduced weapon list, I would say, helps in learning the meta. Quote from Squid, this generalist weapon has some of the most competitive DPS of its class, making it not just generalist, but the best pick in multiple categories. Quote, part of it is its reliability. The downside is it's not the monopole. Quote from Persons, yeah, but how many people are actually spamming it? Of course the kiting fast mover wants the Asterius, but that's just because the kiting fast mover is kind of the equivalent of the generalist ship in StarCore nowadays. Quote from Nate, make the Asterius fixed. Bold move. Welcome back, Persons.
In my
Oh my god.
Wait.
Is he dead for you as well?
Yeah, I think he's dead. Persons, it usually helps if you do not stick your microwave. If you do not stick your microphone into a microwave. Quote from Spartan, Asterius is also one of the few weapons that can reliably hit fast movers, so nerfing it gives non-fast movers one less thing to hit them.
Yeah, so maybe it's possible to just knock on a little armor modifier, right? Maybe even specifically a heavy armor modifier. A negative one, that's what I mean. Like, specifically less good against heavy armor makes it essentially the same while nerfing its use case against a specific type of block or ship being tanks.
Yeah. Quote from Squid, it is also the go-to kinetic gun for fast movers. Honestly, that is a good point. We don't really have too many kinetic guns that work great on fast movers. Do not say the Derico. Do not say the Derico, please. Quote from Aster, adding Sylvius and or Cerberus would be super good. Currently the only foolproof anti-fast kinetic turret is the Reaver/Raider. Let's see, Squid says make holy smokes. Make it heavier just like the Gladius. Very true, Spartan. Turret weight is, in general, a non-factor for most builds. The only
You can make
blocks.
a fast mover with the heaviest damn gun,
Yeah,
as long as that gun isn't like cheap and spam.
yeah. The only reason you didn't see like Type 24 fast mirrors or whatever is because those are really big guns, not necessarily because they're heavy. Quote from Spartan, I think a general consensus seems to be increase the Asterios weight for now, as damage changes on it seem to radically change how it performs.
Again, I think that an actual solution to this, since weight won't impact that much, like you've said, Spartan yourself, is a reduction to a heavy armor modifier, making heavy armor more useful against the general all-purpose gun, keeping it useful against and on fast movers, but giving it something that it's bad against.
Yeah, I would tend to concur with Darth. Unless a weapon is like made of pure osmium, SRB tier heavy, it's almost never a consideration for fast mover pilots on whether to bring or not. Maybe I'm just a really bad fast mover builder, but I've never once thought about weapon weight.
Yeah, unless it's like the fucking Nova Cannon. It's not. Even the Nova Cannon, though.
Yeah, even the Nova can you just slap on more thrust.
Even the Nova Cannon I've seen on Fast Mover, it was a meme because the Nova Cannon isn't a good weapon because of its other profile aspects, but the weight wasn't the factor.
Anomaly, the live stream should be running, so if you want to check back on it whenever you get back, we should have the feedback for you right there. Quote from Chet, no matter how small the change is, my bet is it will pivot from good to useless against HA.
Is that such a bad thing if it was overused? We can keep tuning it back. But honestly, have faith.
Yeah. Alright. If that is all for Serpent Arms, oh, quote from Chet, the Asterios has remained untouched for a long time for a reason, but do what you will. Quote from Squid, there's also very few other mid-range turrets that can hit fast movers and also deal damage. This is an excellent point. Clearly we need to buff the Deimos. Quote from Nate, nerf dodging. How about you use the buttons on your keyboard?
Alright, enough quoting. Let's move to the next
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Okay. Fletcher Armament. Twin 20 mil Bowfor between just right and too weak. Quad 40 mil Bowfor, also just too weak. Quad 40 mil Flak, also just too weak. Let's see. Alana slash Benson slash Fletcher, very much too weak. Des Moines slash Hipper, just right. Turpit slash Jean Bart slash Iowa, just right, leading on too weak. Comments. High and low end turrets could probably use a slight buff. Des Moines is inferior to the Hipper. Aren't those exactly the same gun with a different model? Okay. Fascinating. Quote, the flak is bad versus Derrico's, so I wonder what exactly it's for. The small FAS guns are just bad. Recommend increasing shell speed on them to 2000 and increasing their damage by 20%, but reducing their heavy armor slash component damage so they have an identity in the FAS pack as the anti-air guns. The option for fighting fast movers. Yes, I know semi-armor piercing exists, it sucks. Hipper slash Des Moines are great brawler gun, and I like. The big FAS guns are harder to fit due to do slightly less damage, which is fine, but I suggest giving them slightly more integrity. We need guns that are good for other things than DPS, which sounds like an FAS thing. Note, the big FAS turrets already have the best integ to battle point value. Quote, seeing people say they look so good fighting is nice. Granted, I'm biased. It's my own pack. Looking forward to feedback. Hi, Tate.
Hello, Tate from the past.
Alright, let's open up the stage. Okay, let's see. Oh, there's Tate. Let's see, Tate, are you going to...
Make
There you go.
Yep. So I do plan on buffing the damage on the heavy turrets by about 15%. Simple buff. The hippers and demonics, I don't know why they're performing differently. Either there's some demon messing with it, or what, I don't know. They are identical. They are quite literally identical, the same code, everything, the only difference is the amount of turrets. Turrets barrels. They fire the same amount of times over the course of a minute, like being 3 barrels versus 2. I don't know how they're being different. I don't know, I really don't. The PD options, I am just going to be buffing their shell speed just to keep up. Atlanta, the 5-inch stuff. I'm hesitant to buff the shell speed on them because we already have plenty high shell speed kinetic energy weapons, so I'll probably only buff that if I do buff it on the shell speed. I am buffing their reload though because the Pinzoigan got cut. Now I can actually lower the reload on the 5-inch guns. The 5-inch guns don't actually have a flak radius on them. They are just throw shell at target, boom. I'm waiting to see what other people say. I mean, they're just a kinetic shell, it hits the target, that's it. They don't do any fancy flak fields or anything. Like, I am hesitant to buff the damage on all my guns. Because, nope, not even high explosive. The high explosive is area. Oh no! High explosive would do that, just due to the end of life AoE.
Alright.
I don't know if anyone else has any comments, but I am hesitant to buff stuff without enough data to correlate it.
That is a very fair stance to take. Cool from Demon Fox. FAS small turrets need more shell speed.
And most I'm only gonna buff the Sam shell speed because we have plenty energy weapons that can kick shit in on fast movers. We don't need another one that can do both damage types and kick shit in. Like, I do agree, we do need more high velocity kinetic. I think the high velocity ones already have decent shell. The high calibers have decent shell speed as is. The AP on big ones, what is it? 2,000? Nope, 1,300. Which it is slower, but Fletcher's mainly meant to be the tank versus tank gun at this point. They're very good versus other tanks. We already have plenty to kick shit on fast movers, I think. We don't need more.
Alright.
I mean, I think it's already the second highest durability turret pack. I don't want to contend with Nate for that role. Yeah, I don't want to go anymore because people already complain they're hard to kill. I don't think we want them to be even more harder to kill. Like, yeah, they are surface mounts, so I have to be careful of if I give them too much integrity, they're gonna blow out of proportion. People already kill the armor underneath the guns. That'll just expedite that. Yeah, as a point, I don't want to make them more tanky. They're already ridiculously tanky.
Yep.
Jet says that from experience as well, from scrims. They do not need an integrity buff. You have to shoot the armor on them to kill them at this point already.
Alrighty. Is there any more feedback for Fletcher?
Nate, cut your own eyeballs out. No, I don't. I can't. I genuinely can't unless I give them mount points on the top.
Dang. um, stick a blast plate under them. Easy.
Yeah. We should probably add the barbettes on the feedback stuff somewhere, actually.
That's a good point.
Like, how are the barbettes? I completely forgot they exist. Barring just using them myself.
Yeah, I think everyone else
I think
did too.
fine. Yeah, they're basically a weaker blast plate. They're like roughly the same. They're a bit more expensive than busters for the size, so they're in a good spot. I think. I don't think they need tweaks or anything. They're just. I think I set them up as 5x5 is effectively 25 buster blocks, but they cost like 25 points more. Like they cost more than busters for block because of the size of them.
Alrighty. If there is no more feedback for Fletcher armaments, let's move on to mechanically inclined dynamics. C2 the Shadow Zone with you. Oh, he beat me to it. Okay, Spartan slash F3 Priest. Pretty alright. Reaver Raider. Pretty alright. Yes, some would even say it's mid. Electron Liberator. Pretty alright. Apes. Pretty alright. Mercury. Pretty alright. Bordering on 2 weak. And Trident. Pretty alright. Bordering on 2 weak. As for comments, please make the apes slightly more powerful than it is. It is already good, but I want it to be really incentivized. This could also be done by increasing missile damage across the board by 15%. Quote, pretty much everything in here has this niche. Reavers are kind of one of the most powerful... Reavers are kind of one of the most power-intensive per battle point things in StarCore, but that's fine for its effectiveness. Quote, please buff Spartan bullet velocity. It literally can't hit anything. The floor is open if anyone would like to talk.
Okay, I should be audible now.
Yep, that is much better.
Wonderful. So, I will admit that the comment I made here, which is about the apes and so on, is probably a touch stupid, but I am interested to hear what people think about that kind of thing as a concept. I'm going to bring it up again at the end of the council in a more general fashion, but like, how do people feel about the idea of making PD more incentivized by just buffing missiles across the board? That's all I got.
Fucking nuts. Great. And you should feel bad.
Alright, quote from Spartan. I agree with the pre-slash Spartan velocity thing. They can't hit anything moving even mildly fast. Quote from Chet. Reliable cheap energy damage, my beloved. Quote from Squid, the race nuke shields in spam cactus meta was put to death for a reason. Tate, we will talk a bit more about buffing missiles across the board during the general discussion. Alright. Is there any feedback for the mid guns themselves? Quote from Nate. 25 battle points with climbing costs, not because they were strong, but because performance. But yeah, you could take 4 to 6 of them for like the cost of one big turret. In regards to Spitfires, I assume? Quote from Tate, from what I saw, apes were the only thing that dealt with Derricos, so they're fine I think. Tridents could maybe get a tiny love tap. I would be inclined to agree on the Tridents. They are not very strong from what I've seen, but they also suffer from being a guided weapon. So hard to buff very much. Alright. If there is no other discussion points for mechanically inclined dynamics, you have like 15 seconds. Oh, quotes for Master. Ape's range is a bit goofy. How so?
Ape's range is one of the few things going for it. Like, it's good laser PD, but it gets outshone by most other stuff if you don't take into account its range because of its slower turn speed and its overheat. Oh, by range do you mean it's too short and bad?
Quotes for Master. If it had a short minimum range, then I would understand the 6 kilometer max. Like 1.5 to 2 kilometer min.
It basically does because of its turn speed.
Alright, we'll see you later, Anomaly. Alright. Quote from Nate, it has a 6 kilometer range and does 1 AMS damage per beam. At 3.5 kilometers, it has another beam, which does, I think, 50 AMS damage every 50 laser patterns or something. Alright. So we will look into the range so that... Sorry, we will look into the range from the apes. Let's move on to NHI before Chet gets fired. Alright, Heimdall, just right, bordering on a little too weak. Surtur, very just right. Aesir, just right with a tiny little bit of too weak. Hurricane, very just right. Mark II battleship cannon, just right. Magnetic coil cannon, just right with a tiny bit of too weak. Mark III battleship cannon, perfectly just right. Comments. Quote, these weapons are pretty much fine-tuned. Mark IIIs are standout in terms of versatility, but are not overpowered. Quote, Heimdall really should be 50 battle points as they are mostly an aesthetics choice. You'll look really cool as all those PDables hit you. Alright, the floor is open if anyone wants to talk. Yes, I would agree with the sentiment that, quote from Tate, NHI is a nice pack, and should be considered a benchmark in some capacity for stuff that functions like it.
Okay. You might hear a metal roof. I doubled the AoE range and AMS damage of the Heimdall shortly after the TT during scrims. What more does it need? Zari traverses pretty fast. I could buff the range, but it's only so effective at maximum range anyway. I'll make you the laser nade.
Quote from Demon Fox, it's more the Heimdall does not really have anything to actually shoot at effectively. We've got LRM spam, MRM spam, near invincible Cocytus, it's got tridents, and that's about it.
Hey now, it can shoot down LRMs after a few tries. So when I tested it, 2 Heimdalls could shoot down 1 launcher of LRMs at the weaker state. So technically 1 Heimdall should be able to deal with 1 launcher worth of LRMs. And the problem comes with scale, so Ballistic PD is hard because it's not his skin. It's not really a shotgun. I mean, it kind of is at maximum range with its deviation, but maybe I could tune that in, actually. I could try massively reducing the deviation so it stays on target more at longer ranges, and we could go from there. I gotta get back to working now before I get fired.
See ya, Chet, don't get fired.
See y'all later.
See ya.
Alright, actually funny that you bring up a fake kinetic point defense, Tate. I do believe that's what the Painless was originally supposed to be. Quotes from Aster. Also, Heimdall is funny for spamming a billion ones on the HUD if it finds a random block floating in space. Is it able to target grids?
Only if they're small enough.
Alright, we can turn that off. Quote from Aster, but the bazillion ones makes me feel like I'm winning. Alright, if there's no other feedback for NHI, let's move on to Solaris Hypernautics. We are so close, we only got like 20 more to go. Nariman, overwhelmingly not sure. Just right, with a little bit of too weak. SM3 counter battery, just right. Gonko Magnapulse, just right, with a little bit of too strong. That's interesting. I don't think we've seen anyone use it recently. Hercules Mac, just right. As for comments, quote, Narns are like the only point defense countered by other point defenses. Give those shells some more HP so they aren't instant popped by random apes. Man. Counter batteries really need strike crafts to smack. Quote from Aster. Narimans are funny for DDoSing non-laser point defense. Oh yes, the floor is open if anyone would like to talk. Alright. Remind me to try a Gonko on a fast mover team. That would be pretty funny. Alright, if there is no more feedback for Solaris Hypernautics, let's move on to Exotic. Oh, yes, fast mover Gonko would be very scary. My shields are invulnerable and I am very angry. Okay, the Metal Storm is a mix between just right and too weak. The Artificial Sun Launcher is just right. As for comments, quote, why does the Metal Storm still exist? We lost so many nice weapons, but kept the Metal Storm? Quote, honestly super niche, so can't complain. Quote, we could probably merge this into the SOL mod itself to cut off unneeded load coming in from extra mods. That's a decent idea, actually. For those unfamiliar, every single weapon core mod that has its own weapon definitions, whatever, adds an additional 1.5 seconds to load time, regardless of what is actually contained in it. So the less weapon core mods we have, the better. This quote from Tate, of course, ask Anomaly before you just shove stuff into his mod. Yes. That would, of course, be done. Alright, if that is all for exotics, actually, let's move on to heavy assault systems. Were there comments for Haas, or did just no one fill them out? Okay, Tartarus, just right. Cocytus, just right. Avenger, just right. Tigtone, just right. I think we have a winner. The floor is open. I see you lurking in chat, Wiseman.
Spotted.
Quote from Squid. I love racktones. I love racktones. I love racktones. We all love fixed guns. Let's see. And yes, the Tictone might be deserving of a new model, but it is not a high priority item. Quote, Persons has a Tictone model in the works. Quote from Tate, Avenger could use a volume down by like 5 or 10% because I just hear Bert whenever they fire across the map. Quote from Demon Fox, make it 3x3. Quote from Squid, no. I concur. Two by two for life, says Wiseman. Alright, if there is no other actual feedback for all access, sorry, for heavy assault systems, let's move on to all access. Quote from Wiseman, you all will suffer for my decisions even longer. Hey, I think 2x2 guns are pretty cool. Alright, the faulty SRB, just right. The dead pack, just right. The afterburner 1x1, and all the afterburners for that matter, just right. Blink drive, just right. Really. 2x dampening enhancer, just right. Custom turret controller. I don't know how to parse that. Radar warning receiver, just right. Sauron. I think it needs a buff. Flares, just right. Metal foam, just right. Blast plates, just right. Fusion reactor, just right. 2 weak needs a buff. SI generator, just right. Really? Okay.
I mean, the 50% is huge. The
Yeah.
utility of losing out on siege mode is bad, but it was never the be-all, end-all. Even at the annoying 2.5 fucking minute long, which was a problem, that was never, like, the end of the world. It was a problem, but the reason the SI gen is important is just the not having to take shields, the build
Yeah.
aspect of it, rather than the in-game application.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I was kind of expecting it to be too strong with the 0 power draw and all that.
It might have been had people had enough time to figure out how best to exploit the fact that it had no power draw.
True.
Um,
Thankfully, I did
which
not have to
now
yell at anyone for exploiting it.
have we read the comments yet?
Just about to.
Okay, let's do
Alright.
that first.
Quote, SI gen is not properly functioning. It does not draw power, but I don't think it's too weak. We'll get to that.
Basically what we just said, but we'll talk more.
Honestly, all usable. Stop touching the SI generator. No. No, it's meant to have power draw. We'll get to that, but feels really fine during scrims right now. Getting fed up with the whole complicating things for complication's sake.
I agree with this in general. When it was working, I don't know why we bothered to try to make it into whatever modular, like, it was working, we should have left it working. the way it was working.
Yeah. I think that the new system is cool, and I fully support it, but I get what you're saying. Oh.
But I will have Janik and I specifically, because we talked before this, will have a specific answer about the SI gen once we finish all the code.
Yes. What?
Hmm.
Hold on. Am I missing something? I think we lost some comments.
Did they just get shuffled around because you refreshed?
I think they're just gone. Okay, anyway. Oh yeah, I got reshuffled. Quote, going to be constructive instead of screaming. I highly recommend we bring the old SI gen back, but as its own block, while the constant fixes are being applied to the new one. We will get back to that. Active blast plates not having a limit or stacking costs will cause problems in the future. Quote, Tartarus is functionally an I-win button so long as you don't dunk them into a shield. Ripple flare means flares don't do good, and most PD struggles to deal with more than a couple in sequence. Fusion thrust is functionally useless at the moment. I see us dropping thruster battle points to 100, doubling their HP and weight, and widening the thrust plume to be in line with the Wraithy Hydros. 4.8 tick tone is great. Okay, so I guess it was missing the comments here. Alright.
Before we talk about SI gen that Janik and I had discussed before this, why don't we address the other comments about fusion thrust and Cocytus, or Tartarus first?
Absolutely. The floor is open for non-SI generator related comments. Tate says, isn't the fusion thrust still a testing mechanic? It is in permanent beta. Quote from Squid, the Tartarus one is just people not bringing point defense. Nobody brings as much point defense anymore because Strikecraft made it useless. Okay, Aster says, fusion thrust should be limited to 200% of reactor output at most. Interesting. Fusion thrust does have the same restrictions as reactors in that the more power you shove into a single thruster, the less thrust it outputs for that amount of power. But limiting the overclock slider might be a wise idea. Alright, if there are no other comments on the generic all access stuff, let's talk about the structural integrity generator. Okay, so first off, I must genuinely apologize for not getting out the patch sooner. We should have had that ready to go like multiple days before the testament, and that is partially on me, so my apologies. Um, the modders and Darth and myself talked a little bit before this, and what we have decided to do is not bring back the old SI generator as has been suggested, uh, but we will focus all of our development resources on making sure the new structural integrity generator is up to par.
So,
While,
Janik,
go ahead.
you suggested that you would be working on actually getting it built properly from the ground up again, with the bells and whistles, yeah? But for now, while you find the time to get to that, we will just be using the one that we put in now and giving it some flat power consumption such that it isn't entirely exploitable for that. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Until the new structural integrity generator is confirmed functional, we will be sticking with the current lobotomized version, with the addition of a small power draw. Um, while it would be nice to revert to the old structural integrity generator, it is unfortunately not in a stable enough state that we could safely do that, and we do not have the developer resources to multitask in that manner.
So for now, we have something that works, even though it doesn't have, scaling power consumption or siege mode that's configurable and balanceable or at all. Um, it doesn't have a slider. You can't change the amount of power to protection you're getting. It won't turn off if it doesn't have power. It just applies your resistance and will take some power.
Yep.
Ideally, it will take some power. Probably like 300 to 600 megawatts. Not all too much, but enough that you have to have some amount of power on your grid and it will consume it. Some less amount than shields would necessitate. I was thinking just one large reactor is worth 300.
Yeah.
And for now, until we can confirm with multiple scrims that new functionality being restored works, this lobotomized version is just what we have. That's that.
Yep.
I did want to bring up in Balance Council and gauge the room on how we feel about lowering the climbing cost with the shield controller from 2,500 to 1,500 and seeing if that makes expensive ships actually consider bringing both. Because I did not want it explicitly to be a hard either or. I wanted the option to overpay for both to be there, to make yourself, yes, closer to an unkillable tank, but at the cost of, like, that's 1,500 points of weapons you can't use. That's 1,500 more points of power you can't use. It's currently, nobody does it at 2,500. And like Spartan says, I want to keep it at too much. Like, if Spartan decides to take a capital shift, if someone runs a 3-stack, I want it to be slightly more considerable of an option. And if Spartan's sitting there saying 1,500 is still too expensive, then it sounds like a perfect amount to reduce it to me.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth trying.
And I would say
Because I made it precautionarily prohibitively expensive so that we didn't have unkillable stuff running around And I think it's been long enough that no one's really tried experimenting with it too much that I'm willing to give it a big nudge while staying expensive.
Yeah, and I would say that while 1,500 battle points is certainly high, it is not excessively so. The main reason to not use SIGen and shields on the same grid is that SIGen absolutely nukes your power capacity. At least in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose
And
you could
honestly,
get
this lobotomized version would be a big buff to that as well,
yes.
since it won't use the percentage power. It'll take a flat amount of a big ship.
Oh, does it,
Should be significantly
Chet?
less for a big ship. The
Uh,
new one you?
my bad. I have not actually used the new one to a significant degree. Sorry, for the stream, Chet says, quote, the SI Gen has not used a percentage system in a while. Even the new one used fixed power costs.
The new one was in and out of a functionable state so much that I probably just assumed any fixed power cost was a bug, and we had yet to get the percentage power cost working or something. I'll be perfectly honest, because that's how it used to work. And we probably talked about it too, but everything is going in and out of my brain so fast these days that I apologize. That's probably a me.
Let's see, Aster says, quote, tiny murder nuts have too much impact in my opinion. So long as this doesn't make sense for Lightcraft, I think it's great. I would agree with this sentiment.
A Lightcraft would hypothetically still be able to use this, but Lightcraft have never benefited that much from an SI gen in general. But like, if you're thinking about like two half Tatos on a team, and one of them using all the mass, one of them's not, I think it's still fine if that smaller, lighter half Tato can use an SI gen, right? Ultimately, you won't make it that much more durable. If you're a light, fast ship and you get all your thrusters blown out by a Cocytus either way, it doesn't. That is a very hot take, Tate, but you're full of those, so.
Yep. You're allowed to have opinions, even if they're wrong. Okay, Chet says, quote, stability would partially solve it if they did start taking it, if I can get the base system working. Stability has a higher loss on smaller ships and lower on large. Quote from Aster, yeah, I'd like to see high point ships be viable as an option.
Yeah, I'd love to see if even in like scrims we see Spartan or Preston, or the usual offenders, actually take a half Tato into scrims or like a 1/3 points flagship sort of thing with both. Just why I'm suggesting the change, and it sounds like people are on board, so I think we'll push that as well if you have that in the notes.
Alright. Let's see, we'll slap that in general discussion. Alright, let's move into special questions from the forum. Quote, don't touch drones, lots of fun potential. They didn't do anything this tournament, but the potential is there and allows for new strats. That's actually something I would like to talk about once we finish this up.
Oh yeah, drones is something we need to talk about for sure.
Quote, I'd suggest revising the early game restart rules so both teams have to agree to continue. Oop, that is also something I want to talk about. Quote, don't know where else to put it, so, quote, ban grid drones and remove hangar bays. They don't add anything positive to the StarCore gameplay in my opinion. If I wanted to fight AI, I go to the testing range. Let's keep StarCore about pilot skill and not whose AI performs better. Otherwise, keep up the good work. Quote, can we put a limit on the amount of drones, or at least figure out how to make them not lag the game? We'll get to that. Quote, good test tournament, but I am going to bring up a 3.5 minute guaranteed restart if a team reports an issue at the incoming balance council. GG's. We'll get to that. Doritos cause significant lag client side. Excessive drones cause significant lag client side. It probably also causes significant lag server side too. We'll get to the second part of that. Already covered the first part. Quote, good test tournament was fun. That was actually a really good test tournament. That's some of the best fights we've had in a long time, in my opinion. Well done to the organizers for TT 4.9. Quote, just keep up the consistency of tourneys and we will develop again. Otherwise, good job. EA. Alright. So, looks like people are already talking about the early game issue rules, so we'll do that. There was a proposition in one of the team private channels of, and I guess in the balance form too, of if either team experiences an issue within the first 5 minutes of the game, we should immediately restart the match regardless of what the issue is and what either team thinks of it. I think that this would be an excellent addition to have, as while it would be nice to rely on pure sportsmanship, and it would be nice if we had no issues whatsoever with space engineers, unfortunately neither of these are true. So, what do you guys think? The floor is open, by the way. Quartermaster, I love double elim format or a couple non-elimination initial rounds to seeing a similar elimination. So would I, but unfortunately, the tournament organizers have finite time, and it's really hard to run double elimination tournaments without multiple concurrent streams. I absolutely agree, though. That'd be really cool. Alright, if there are no further comments on the early game issue rulings, let's move on to complaining about drones. Oh, let's see. Spartan says, quote, we should adjust ships for getting tickets if they're power killed but repaired. Sure, we can make a point for that. Okay, so, drones. I'll start that conversation. So, I think that drones, grid drones specifically, are pretty cool, but we should not be seeing them in the numbers they were seen in this test tournament.
I think that's a pretty common sentiment. I share it.
Yeah. And this is primarily for performance reasons, just for the record.
We did see both teams that are spamming them lose.
Yes.
But like you said, it's more for performance and not necessarily for balance.
Um, while I hate proposing hard caps, I think this might be one of the rare instances where a hard cap would be a good idea. What would be a good number? 30, 25, 10? Yeah. I would agree with 15. I'm sure 20 would be perfectly safe though. Yeah. Yep, we can always increase that later. Alright, that was easy enough. Let's talk about dead but repairable ships re-aliving themselves. In case you're not familiar, the current system for share track tracks the number of megawatts that your ship can produce for whether it's alive or not. So if all of your reactors are damaged, then you are no longer counted as alive, even if you can weld yourself back up to functional. This should probably be changed to just count the number of power blocks instead of the amount of megawatts produced. Are there any thoughts on that? Spartan is nothing personal, but unfortunately we have to be aware of people that are running on netbooks from 2006, and also people that do not have gigabit Ethernet. Yeah, me personally. Yes, you can have zombie fusion ships at 0 megawatts, but that's such a rare situation that I do not want to think about it. Alright. Is there any other points for general discussion that anyone would like to make? Again, as always, the floor is open. Alright, if not, let's see. Squid still in the audience? No, I think he left. Oh no, there he is. Squid, do you want to come up here and talk about your Brawler Bowl, or do you want me to do the talking? Alrighty. Wait, what was that shirt too? There we go.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you guys hear me?
Hello.
Alright, cool. Alright, so it would be a 3v3 randomly match-made scrimble. If any of you guys were around for the beginning of Season 3 and remember the 3v3 scrimble we had right before 3.1, it would be pretty similar to that. So it would be between 10.5 and 15 mil. That's 12.5 plus or minus 2, and 8750. So the idea would be just to give newer players a chance to get accustomed to how it is to fly in combat without having to go into a TT and get a team and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know yet if there will be any prizes offered. I have to talk to the rest about that and see. But my original idea was something like a spray with the winners' names on it, or ship names or whatever, similar to the flags that we had in Season 3.
Yep.
But that's something yet to be discussed with Invalid and Aristaeus.
Yeah. We'll talk about that for a little bit after the Balance Council so we can get an announcement off sooner rather than later.
Just allow me testing 40. Oh yeah, so that would also not be allowed. It would be 10.5 mil minimum for your actual ship, not including SRBs. It's not really any good way to hard enforce that, but I mean, it's a tournament for fun. If you're gonna go in there and sweat with 40 SRBs, then shame on you. So
Don't be a nerd. Derogatory?
yeah, don't be that guy.
Okay. Awesome. Definitely look forward to that event. Again, as a reminder from earlier, if you want to have events like Squidopolis's Brawler Bowl, please do reach out to the tournament organizers and we can get you set up. We love
we
to
love
see events.
facilitating events when the people interested in them do most of the work, and we can just help like provide a server and a bracket.
Yep.
10.5. I mean, it's within the rules. I gave that plus or minus 2 mil for a reason. 10.5 is pretty comfortably in brawler territory, so knock yourself out. In that mass range, the speed curve kind of isn't as impactful as would be for between, say, 6 and 8 or 9 mil. So it's not a huge issue to have ships that are a couple mil below or a couple mil above. I don't think there needs to be any adjustments to RTS,
Yes.
honestly.
I would concur with that. I would advise against making any mod changes unless they're absolutely necessary for an event.
I was thinking of restricting Derrico's just for the sake of the performance cost, but if that's being changed, then it's all good.
Alright. Let's see if there are no more questions or comments for Squid's Brawler Bowl. Let's see, I don't think I'm technically supposed to say anything yet, but there will probably not be a test tournament next weekend on the 9th, but we are considering one for the 16th. There will be an announcement as soon as we get that figured out. Okay. I'll skip over reading the notes because it has been 2 hours already. Holy smokes, I don't think they usually last that long.
Usually about that long, maybe a little shorter, but they were pretty much on track.
I'll try and make these run a bit faster if I do ever run a Balance Council again. Alright, thank you all for showing up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback for the team or specific modders, you guys are free to get in contact with us. If no one has anything else to say, you all have a great night.